Leap into the deep. Sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it? Many of us pull back from the edge of the waterfall to be safe. We will dip our toes in the water to see how cold it is before we take any kind of plunge. And we'll often choose the path that is most comfortable and assuring. Thrill seekers are the ones who do daredevil things. Adrenaline junkies push the limits of experience. And perhaps we think, not I. I play it safe, I'm cautious, I pre-plan. I'm in control of my situations and outcomes. Does this sound more like you? So what does leap into the deep mean to the guests that I have on today? Dr. Margaret Winters came to healthcare after her career in interactive multimedia, and she was sidelined by chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. As a functional medicine practitioner, she specializes now in restoring gut health and ensuring long-term brain health. Her leap into the deep transformed both her health and her career in a way that could support others in wellness. Did her leap create a change worth transformation? Alison Stillman is a renowned alchemist of love, an author, a teacher, and a conscious alchemy coach. She's considered an expert on the historical use of essential oils in religious and spiritual ceremonies. Her story of transformation has provided her with experiences of awakening and inspiration, and her outreach to others expands the depth of knowledge she has created with vibration and ritual. Did her leap create the space for change and growth to magnify for herself and others? Myself, Dr. Michelle Greenwell, I started in the area of wellness, became a dance educator, then a studio owner, and I shared my passion for dance and movement until I was crippled by stress, and I had to learn how to take care of my body and repair the damage to the tissue from the stress it endured by the passion to perform. This started with a lack of information about how to support the body and led to my doctoral studies, and they are in complementary and integrative health. So did my leap into the wellness field create change beyond my own ability to walk without pain? Absolutely, and it created a whole new knowledge about what it means to move correctly and to be well. So Leap into the Deep is a new program that the three of us have been talking about, and we've been pulling together ideas. It's a playful dive into the multi-dimensions of health and well-being, and we're three renowned healers sharing practical wisdom for our body, mind, movement, and spirit. We hope that you're ready to play with us. You're listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. This is sponsored by the Cape Breton Tea Company and Dance Debut Inc. And please welcome now my guests, Dr. Margaret Winters and spiritual guide Alison Stillman. Hello, ladies. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a joy to be with you both.
Okay, let's begin. Let's get this conversation started with a little intention for the listeners. So if they have their goal in mind of why they're listening to us to learn about Leap into the Deep, then if we bring in from my affirmations for the body and biofield deck, so I'll just put the cover up. So those people who are on podcast listening, it's a black cover and it has a ribbon of color that runs through the center called Mother and Child, which is what Tanya Levy, the artist, named it. And so we think about how we nurture ourselves when we think of this deck. And I'm just going to hold up now the card that I pulled for today. And this one has pink, green, white, purple, blue, and red weaving through it. It comes from Meeting the Divine section of the deck, and it's supporting the 11th chakra, which is the left foot. And the left foot is where energy comes into the body, and we have the opportunity to enhance the energy and vitality that we live with. The affirmation is, step forward into your future. All you need will be provided. Movement is medicine, and the path is clear. So that's where we're heading today. And we have some tea. So Alison, do you want to share what tea you chose for today?
So I have a mushroom chaga with raw cacao in there. and a little bit of coconut milk and almond milk, and it's yummy, delicious.
Wow. And the mug that you have, it's is that green?
It is. It's kind of a teal green, which is one of my favorite colors. Yeah.
Is that your favorite mug that you usually hold on to?
It is, because you can put a lot of tea in it and it lasts a long time. It has this really comfy handle that you can get all your fingers in.
I could sense the way you were holding it, because sometimes people just hold the mug up, but you were like hugging it as you were holding it, for those people that are listening and can't see. Oh, beautiful. Margaret, how about you? What have you got?
I have a tea that I get from a Chinese herbalist in DC, and she calls it Perfect 10. Let me see if I can remember everything in it. It has ginger, tulsi, cinnamon, anise, star anise, orange, a little apple, pink peppercorns, and I can't remember the last thing, but it's obviously an aromatic tea and a spicy tea and a warming tea, which I tend to like. I don't usually need cooling teas except in the very heat of the summer. And we're in springtime, so it has this lightness to it, which I really like a lot.
Beautiful. And how about your mug?
I love the color of this mug. It's not a handmade mug, but it is a lovely shape that has a nice capacity to it. It holds a lot of tea, like Allison's. Maybe not quite as comfortable a handle, but I tend to hold it again in two hands. And it's one of the cups that I use quite a bit.
And for those people that are listening, it's a nice, vibrant blue. That's what she's holding on to. All right. And from the teas from the Cape Breton Tea Company, I went to the Teas with Intention today. And I thought about kind of where we were going, leap into the deep, and decided to choose the Rising Tides. So it comes from the water element and the support for kidney and bladder meridians. It represents calming and bringing peace to any fear and anxiety. And this would be then giving us just a little bit more support to the bladder and kidney systems, not the organs directly, but to the system, so that it can take some of that stress out. And I've got mine in my PEI mug. So this one has dirt from PEI in the paint. And so I always love to wrap my hands around that one and feel that. And same as you've all described, the handle just feels so nice when I can put my hands in it. So I'm just interested how each of us is kind of, what does it feel like to hold the cup of tea? That seems to be important, which is a great thing to bring to our listeners to think about. What are they putting their tea in, and is it serving more of a purpose than just a beverage? And what are you doing with the luxury of what's inside that mug? So thank you both for sharing what you've got there. Allison, how about if we start with your journey of discovery and just looking at how you started working with the alchemy, the essential oils, and then into rituals. You want to tell us your story?
It's actually been a lifelong joy and love. My grandmother was an incredible gardener and had fragrant plants and flowers in her garden. And I have pictures of me in my diapers wandering around her garden, just delighting in the smells. But what really took it off for me, and I studied herbs and healing and things like that when I was a teenager. But when I was 18, I went to the Northern California redwood forest with friends. We were camping out. And I hiked down to the bottom of this valley floor in amongst the redwoods. And I wandered along this little stream, just meandering at the beauty of the forest. And I started smelling this sweet smell in the forest. And I went, wow, what is that? It smells like flowers. And so I just followed my nose and I came upon a wild rhododendron bush that was about 6 feet tall in full bloom. And I walked up to it and I put my head in the middle of all the flowers. And I took this big inhale and closed my eyes. And all of a sudden, it overtook all of my senses. So the smell became this beautiful color in the back of my eyes, this sweet humming sound in my ears. And I could feel this caress on my body from this fragrance. And it ignited this deep sense of smell inside of me. And I said, I'm going to study everything I can about the world of aromatic plants. And it set me on a course that I still continue to this day, the study of. And it led me to some of the world's renowned aromatherapists and distillers and researchers. And I've just gone deeper and deeper and deeper. And as I began to really play with essential oils and use them in a daily basis, I started discovering significant changes within not only my emotional being, but also my physical being and overall well-being. And it's just taken me on a journey around the world and in every element of growing plants, distilling them, creating oils, using them, doing some research studies with them. And it's led me to this place of, it's always been about me in that I have grown and learned and gone so deep with this exploration. And what really took me into the direction of working with the alchemy of essential oils was an experience I had with a doctor about 35 years ago, Dr. Valerie Ann Warwood, who was a doctor from the UK, has written many, many books on essential oils. And the very first time I smelled pure Omani frankincense, I had a past life memory. And I remembered being at the foot of the cross as Jesus was being crucified. And I was with all of the disciples on the top of this hill, and I could look down and see the village down below and the barren landscape of the desert. And I could feel everyone's pain in this experience. And I was in a classroom with her with about 45, 50 people. And by the time I came back into awareness of being back in the classroom again, I had a group of people gathered around me. And one woman had her hand on my arm and she said, "Are you okay?" And the first words that came out of my mouth were, "I want to do anointing work." And she said, "What is that?" And I said, "I don't know what that is." So I bought some frankincense, this pure Omani frankincense, which is the finest frankincense in the world and very hard to get. It's gone on the endangered species list. But it's a psychoactive oil, meaning that it elicits deep meditative states of awareness. And it's the reason it's been used in sacrament for thousands of years, and as well as fragrancing churches to take you into that deep meditative state. And I started meditating with it, and I kept going back to this temple in Egypt where the priestesses did these long, involved rites of passage with essential oils, anointing rituals. And I learned from that experience that this is a powerful tool to use when you want to let go of old aspects of yourself or old belief systems or old states of being, and you want to initiate new states of awareness and experience in your life. And at the time when that happened, this 35 years ago, there was nothing written about anointing except for what was in the Bible. And there's over 150 references to anointing in the Bible, but nothing else. So I started just playing with it and working with friends. Whoever would get on my table, I would play with it. And people started having the most incredible experiences, letting go of old wounds, trauma, abuse, addictions, all kinds of things, and complete life changes from using oils in a ceremony of anointing. So that was very life-changing for me in every single way. And it became back then, and still is, the mission of what I'm here to do, why I wrote my book and have been teaching about it, et cetera, for so many years. I think it's the most powerful tool that we have to change not only the frequency of who we are and our physicality, but also the emotional experience, mental experience, and to up-level our lives in every way. And so my mission has always been to become the biggest vessel of love that I can be, which is the highest frequency we can resonate at. And essential oils are the most powerful tool I know of to do that.
Wow. Wow. Allison, what is the name of your book? So those people listening, you mentioned that.
It's called The Sacred Art of Anointing.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And when I was guided to write this book, I said, okay, I need to do some research. And that's when I discovered there was nothing written. I went to old archive museums and manuscript museums and libraries. There was nothing written. I'm like, okay, this is just coming from my soul and I'm going to put it out there. But, it was also based on at that point, about 15 years of experience of working with people with essential oils and doing anointing rituals and blessing ceremonies and sacraments. I became a minister along the way and have done weddings and last rites and baptisms and things like that. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Wow.
What strikes me so powerfully about what you describe, Allison, in the last part of what you were talking about is what a privilege it is to be a part of people's lives at these deep, profoundly transformative moments, and using the essential oils to bypass all the filters that we have in the brain, which we develop over time. Because the olfactory nerve, which is it's a little bulb at the very base of the brain, it's one of the oldest parts of the brain. That's why, a smell like honeysuckle can take you back to childhood in a snap. And there are no filters there, which is why I think you're seeing the kinds of incredible psychoactive transformations that people are experiencing with your work, which is immensely powerful.
I am astonished all of the time with the feedback that I get from my clients. They'll come back to me and they'll say, you remember this happened and that happened and you said this and you said that. And I'm like, I don't remember it so much, but they all tend to. And the transformations are just absolutely incredible. I'm just blessed and amazed at them all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about your deep dive. So, you start on this path and you're working away and you get to things like no one's recorded it. What makes you say, I can do this, I can find that way, or I can start the writing? Was there a way that you noticed for yourself how you were able to make that decision to say, I'm going to go forward and do this?
It was a compulsory thing. I really had no choice. I was driven. It was a mission for me. I knew that it was familiar, but it wasn't, and so I had to push my intellectual mind aside and say, there's nothing more important than this. There's nothing more powerful than this. It's almost, it gave me such a strong connection to my spiritual side and to my divine awakening. And over the years, having done these sessions with people for so long, I don't think there's a faster way to awaken divinity in people of anything that I've ever studied. And I've studied, I'm a Reiki master and done sound healing and a lot of other things, but people have this remembrance of this smell. I was working with my aunt who had advanced stages of Parkinson's and went into serious delusional states with it. And I could bring oils and I could bring her right back. And I could get to her and ask her the questions that I needed to get to. And it's funny because when she was passing a couple of days before she died, we didn't grow up Catholic. We weren't exposed to frankincense. She had never smelled frankincense before. And 2 days before she passed, I anointed her body with frankincense. And she opened her eyes and she said, "Oh, I remember this smell." Well, she was never exposed to the smell in this lifetime, but her soul had a remembrance of it because we've been using frankincense for thousands and thousands of years for last rites, right? And so it allowed her to go into this place of ease. And also, again, because it has those psychoactive properties, it allows you to see states or see beyond the veil, if you will. And it helps ease transition from this life into the afterlife. And so when you have experiences like that, there's nothing, nothing else compares to that, right? And to help somebody have these incredible awakenings, there's nothing better than that. So of course I want more and I want to go deeper and I want to take more people deeper. So it's been a compulsion.
Wow. That's beautiful. The magic that happens, right? When you feel like you're in the right place, doing the right thing. And then it just is. Yeah. Yeah. And writing your book, did that kind of come about in the same kind of way? I mean, I know you had to do some digging because it wasn't written of before, but did it almost, I don't want to say write itself, but
it did write itself. Exactly. Yeah. I went on sabbatical for 10 months at a little cabin in the woods. And I just made a daily time for 2 hours I would write. And honestly, I don't know what I wrote at the time. And it just came through. It's what spirit wanted to be said, right? Or to be remembered. And the research that I did was after I wrote the book. I'm like, okay, I should go verify this. I should go see, who else has written about this and how they wrote about it and what the research was. And that's when I discovered there was nothing. I couldn't find anything written about it.
Wow. Beautiful. Okay, so let's shift over to you, Margaret, and your story of how you got to where you are, because you didn't start in the chiropractic world. So tell us a little bit about where you started from and what led you to do a deep dive.
It's so funny because chiropractic actually, in many respects, has been a gateway for me from where I was to where I'm going. I started out in the realm of multi-image. So storytelling using, for example, I got really interested in, I was living in Texas, in Central Texas, and I got really interested in the mural culture that comes out of Mexico and traced that back through San Antonio to Mexico City and was doing, a storytelling mechanism via multi-image with some of the music from that culture. So I had gotten very interested in that marriage of image and sound and narrative. And that brought me ultimately to using those tools in the medical realm, which was kind of surprising, but it evolved. And I ended up working for, oddly enough, IBM in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was working a lot. I had just bought a house. I was renovating a house. I was in a new marriage. I was traveling a lot internationally to teaching how to organize learning experiences in an interactive virtual realm that was collaborative. And it was really fun and it was really interesting and it was very cerebral, but I loved my colleagues. But I started to get bouts of what I thought was the flu. I would come back from a trip and I would be down for a day, and then it was 2 days, and then it was 3 days, and my vitality was draining away. So ultimately, it became really clear to me that there was something going on above and beyond a flu, right? And it really came to a head one day when I was walking from my car into my office, and I got about halfway between the building and my car, and I just burst into tears. I remember looking around. It was a beautiful day. It was blue sky. It was springtime in Atlanta, which is gorgeous if you like azaleas. And I felt so disconnected from the beauty of the world around me, and everything hurt, and I felt terrible. And I just thought, I cannot push through this. What I'm doing isn't working. This is beyond the tools of the people that I've been consulting in the medical realm. And that was what pushed me to embark on a journey of healing. So at that point, I was willing to try anything that would help. I was going to the chiropractor. I was going to a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. I was doing everything that I can think of. And slowly I started to put together the tools that are some of the same tools that I use now. I changed my diet. I changed the way I slept. I left IBM. I ended up going to chiropractic school because chiropractic was one of the things that helped, because it started to get movement in my body in ways that it had not been moving. And the reason I opted to go to chiropractic school was because it's such a practical way of helping people move from one state to another, from a state of dysfunction to a state of greater function. But as it turns out, that was only part of the picture for me. I got interested in how the gut relates to structural health. And the more I worked with and learned about the body, it became clear to me that if internal systemic health is not working well, then nothing on the outside is going to work well. So having come from a place of an almost, was in a state of real decline, energetically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you name it. And so slowly I started rebuilding my health from the inside out. And the more I learned about how the body works, the more central it was clear to me that the gut actually is. It connects directly to the brain, connects directly to the lungs. Everything comes back to the fact that if the gut's not working well, nothing else is really going to work well. And this is particularly important with the brain, because if the gut wall is leaky, if the joints between the individual cells that make up the gut wall are not nice and tight and fluid and resilient and opening and closing to let specific molecules in and out the way it's designed to do by nature, then we have leakage. The more stress we're under, the worse our diet, the more leaky our gut gets. And here's the kicker about that. What happens with the gut wall is a direct reflection of what's on the way with the blood-brain barrier, which is a line of cells that filters the blood going into the brain. It's one of nature's deepest, most profound defense mechanisms. Because we may live in our gut, we may live in our heart, but we operate from our brain most of the time, most of us. So this was the beginning of really seeing how the totality of the body works together, the communication in the body, the movement in the body, the way hormones travel through the blood and are generated and monitored, the way chemical messengers communicate with different organs. All of this started to come together. And although I don't work with hormones per se, the thing that I tell people is, regardless of what's ailing you, in terms of your body architecture, the gut work is the groundwork. If we don't take care of that, anything else you're doing is going to have more limited success than you deserve. So let's take care of the basics. Let's make sure your gut's working well, that you're eating well, that you're digesting well, that you're assimilating the actual nutrients that you need for your biochemistry to function. And that way, anything else you do is going to work better, and you're going to have better quality of life, better movement, better thought patterns, better relationships, better spiritual attunement. All of this is enabled by the body working the way nature designed it to do. So the further that we get from how we are meant to nurture ourselves and live our lives, and we live in a very highly artificial world, and our inputs, the more artificial they are, the worse we do without. So for me, it's been a long journey via chiropractic, to which I'm incredibly grateful, into functional medicine. And now what I really focus on with people is what's going on with your gut, what's going on with your brain, what's going on with your hormones. How can we make this better? And the thing that I've discovered mirrors back to my own experience, which is that if we don't start addressing the patterns of behavior that we've ground into our being over the course of a lifetime, it's so difficult to actually inhabit change. Now, what Allison is talking about is potentially incredibly helpful, because that's a radical state change at a very fundamental level. And that's actually what we need. Most people don't have the ability to take that sort of quantum shift. They need to move more gradually in terms of, let's say you're doing well in one area, okay, of your life. Maybe you're getting really good sleep, which is incredibly important. How can we shift 10% more in that area? Maybe you've started an exercise program and you're starting to move better. How can we shift 10% more in that area? What can we do with when you eat and what you eat to shift 10% more in that area, so that people start to make small, manageable, sustainable change while they're also working on the voices in their heads that keep them safe but keep them stuck. So this is where our cognitive structures really get in our way. So, we all have an inner critic, right? Turns out we have a repertoire of inner critics, and they have very specific kinds of characteristics. So if you can learn to identify those, and it's pretty simple to do that, then you have a much better chance of nailing the voice that's pushing you back to the brownie when you really want to eat a green salad, right? So it's a truism to say that everything in body and it is connected, but it truly is. It's like the little song that some of us grew up with: is the knee bone's connected to the shin bone's connected to the hip bone. It's true. So how you move, how you sleep, how you eat, how you think, all of these connect, but they all come back to that central axis, which is the gut. So if we can work with that, we can shift everything. So that's how I got from that parking lot to here.
And so as you were in that in the transition phase, as you were talking about, it's really hard to make those kinds of changes when they've been around for a while. And Allison has that key of making it easier through the essential oils. But in your process, not having the essential oils beside you, what were the things that drove you to continue to make changes? Because it would be easy to fall back, even though you went to school, and that was your way of doing it, was to go to school and dive in deeper into the subject. What made you stay the course, Margaret, so that you could get to the place where you have that thriving life that you wanted?
It's really a matter of life and death. It was very clear to me that I was in a process where the light was going out at the end of the tunnel. This is 30 years ago. I was a young woman. I knew I had a lot of life to live. And there were things that I wanted to do and experiences I wanted to enjoy. This was not taking me there. It's just not. So everything that I integrated into my life in terms of the way I ate, the way I moved, the way I slept, the quality of the relationships, the way I spend my time, the work I do with people, all adds up. There's no rolling that back for me. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't, I like what Allison said about it's being compulsory. It really, at a certain level, absolutely was and is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'd say that the same would be for me. I just in these last little bits, I've realized how much, as you were talking about those thoughts, those inner critic thoughts, but coming from a place where my knees were not functioning well while I was dancing, and the pain that I was dancing at, which was at the age of 16, when you're finishing, you're growing, everything isn't quite where it should be, but you're still trying to compete. You're trying to work at a professional level, and then being told, well, just quit dancing. We can't do anything for you, so just quit dancing. And it was like, well, that's not going to be an answer. But in my head was, you just push through the pain and then deal with it later. Because if you really want to dance, that's the only way you're going to get there. And so even in my mind too, as I was playing piano and I was practicing 2-3 hours a day and then doing my dance, but I finally said, okay, I can't do both. So I'll dance till I can't dance anymore, and then I'll move to piano. Now, what kind of a thought process is that? So I'll wait till my body's broken, which, and in those days too, was a lot of dancers only danced till they were in their mid-20s. Yeah. And then they all moved to teaching because that was the end of their body. So,
it's that mental construct of pushing through. We will push through to exhaustion. Mm-hmm. Here's the interesting thing about pain. Pain is one of the last symptoms to show up, and it's one of the first to go away. But in its essence, what it is, and it's very motivational because we pay attention to pain. But here's the thing about it, and this is a direct quote from one of my mentors. Pain is a request for change. Mm-hmm. So it's either a change of an approach, a change in state, or a change in energetics. It's whatever kind of change it's asking for. It is a request for change. And if we neglect it at our peril, the problem with pain is that once it goes away, pain tells us we are starting to fall off a cliff. The absence of pain, we could be 1 foot away from the edge of the cliff, ready to 2 steps from falling off, and we don't know it. So that's why functional medicine is so helpful, because it looks at different measures than traditional medicine, conventional medicine that we have now. We look at, different lab ranges, different kinds of measures. But it really comes down to what are the energetics that we're dealing with, and that goes down to the cellular level, to the basic organelle, which is the mitochondria, which transforms, which is really the energy factory of the body. It creates a substance called ATP, which is the money that the body runs on. It's the currency, and it has energetic currency. So the pushing through is exhausting what's in the bank, right? Whereas if we are self-nurturing and living in a way that gives us energy on a daily basis, then we have reserves. So if we need to push in a particular period, fine, we can do that, but we know what our limits are. Whereas the model that you're describing at age 16, and talk about young and dumb and getting bad advice, because we've all been there, right? We've all been there. Is this, I am superwoman, I can do it all, and I'll deal with the cost later. We have no idea what the cost really is. Mm-hmm. The pushing through, I think, it's a very, I hesitate to say it's male, it's Western, but it's not earth-centric, it's not spirit-centric. Mm-hmm. It's not honoring how we actually are and how the body actually works and how the planet actually works. And if we're not orienting ourselves, and we've learned this, the evidence is all around us. If we're not organizing ourselves in coherence with nature, both our internal function and architecture and our external environment, the cost gets higher and higher and higher. And we're less and less able to do the repair that we need. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Allison, from there, if you're thinking about, I'm thinking about the herbs, and I'm thinking about the oils and that connection to nature, where a lot of us have become disconnected just because of how much time we spend inside, in front of a computer, driving in a car. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with the oils from that perspective, bringing us back to nature?
Yes. And it probably goes back to childhood again. I grew up in the South, and my mother was Mormon, my dad was Catholic, and they didn't know what to do with us kids. So they took us to every church, let us try every religion. And there was something inside of me that just said, what do you mean women can't be priests? What do you mean, all these dogma and rules? And I'm like, this isn't how it is. And I love nothing more than to be barefoot in the woods. That was, to me, that's where I touched God, the supreme great mystery, whatever you want to call it. For me, it's divinity, because I think it goes beyond patriarchal and matriarchal. But that's where I said, it's at the oneness. It's nature does it so beautifully. And I think one of the reasons that I've loved matriarchal societies and studied a lot about the goddesses and the priestesses is that they were so in touch with the earth and earth practices. And so for me, I love being in the woods, because I could talk to the trees, I could talk to the flowers, I could talk to the birds and the hummingbirds and the butterflies and all the little sprites and spirits when I was a kid. Of course, that gets ingrained out of you. You get trained through school not to see that. But I kept my connection to nature alive. And that's where I can go into the woods. I can go out on the lake paddleboarding. I can go in a field of flowers, and I let go. I just drop down. And I want to speak to something that Margaret was talking about, because I had a really powerful experience around that push through, that you got to work hard for a living. You got to just make it happen. That whole is very patriarchal, and it's very masculine. And I am a double Aries, so very Mars driven, and had that going on for a long time in my life. I got it. I'm the leader. I can make it happen. I've got it all under control. Don't need your help. Did that whole thing. And about 12, 13 years ago, I started injuring my left side, which is typically associated with the feminine part of who we are. Broke my big toe, fractured my shin, and was laid up. I could not walk. And so I went into meditation and I said, why is this happening? What do I need to know here? What's going on? And my inner voice said, that masculine, pushy, get it done, push through part of you is hurting you physically now. And when you spoke to the pain, and the pain makes us stop and go, wait, what's going on? Right. Mm-hmm. And the voice went on to say, you need to put that masculine, pushy part of yourself to the background now. And it needs to become your support as you allow that feminine, grace-filled, attractive, feminine part, intuitive part of yourself to the foreground. And instead of making things happen, allow things to happen. And it was a massive shift for me. And one I continue to learn from, because it's not something you change overnight. The habits, you can change the belief system, but the habits that are born out of the belief system, the subconscious belief system, they take a little time to break the habit, right? And so once you have it in your awareness, then you go, oh, wait, that's my old program wanting to play itself out. That's the old behavior wanting to play itself out. So it's a journey of remembering, but once it's in your conscious awareness, which the oils are so good at bringing it into your conscious awareness, then you get to have it as a practice of, okay, now I'm intuiting and I'm allowing and I'm becoming an attractor, a magnetic attractor, instead of a slave to the workforce.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think, particularly right now with how much transition is happening for women and the feminine power over what's been happening with the patriarchal setup, it's such an interesting transition time for all of us, because it's not just our own inner dialogue that's needing to change, or that we're trying to let go of some things we were raised with, but it's taking all that in the culture as well, which adds extra. Is it's not just I just want to work within myself. It's you also are then cultivating to a new place in the world. And,
Absolutely.
And
I think that's true. Extra. And I think in terms of individuals, to understand that we have this diversity of being encapsulated within ourselves. We are male, we are female, we are plant, we're animal, we're metal, we're water, we're all these different elements mixed together. And the idea is that there is some kind of dynamic balance. Balance is never static. There's a great line in a song by John Mellencamp says, I know there's a balance. I see it when I swing past. And that's, but the question is whether our range is in the middle, where we can accommodate extremes, and if we need to push through it a certain period of our time, we can do that, but then know when it's time to rebuild our reserves and come back to our center range. So this is one of when we talk about changing how we operate, that is the hardest thing we do. And that's why it has to go in my work at any rate, it has to go across the totality of a human. It's not just a clinical question. It's a human question. It's a personal question. How can we help you make the small changes that are going to move you forward in a way that's really going to start to create some momentum and some centering and some balance and some peace and some vitality and happiness? Because ultimately, it's about, are you waking up this morning feeling like, oh, it's a day. It's a day. Good. Or, oh, shit. That's not a good way to start the day. And we've all spent way too much time there.
Mm-hmm. I think this is one of my delights doing my Tai Chi practice in the morning, is building that energy and vitality for the day. And it seems I'm getting up earlier and earlier because I really enjoy sunrise. And the time change hasn't happened yet. So, where I find that balance yet with spring to summer. But that energy and vitality gets cultivated every day. And I know the difference when it's not there and when it's there. And I know for a lot of people, they just get up and go, or grab the cup of coffee and try to put the caffeine in. And then it's like, start the push right at the beginning, instead of that gentleness of, what do I need to start? What do I need to bring flow? And now let the day unfold as it needs to go. Yeah, it's such a different way of working. So I think
Go ahead, Allison. Well, it's a practice. It's the things that we do to remind us of the truth of who we really are and where we're most happy being, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritual. And so life takes us in all kinds of directions and throws curveballs at us all the time. And it's come back to your practice. What brings you back to center? What makes you happy? Where do you find that? Here I am, right? It's practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And practice is made up of habits, right? I mean, it's the small things that we do every day. It's the small decisions that we make. It's how do we deal with exceptional situations? This is something I see with running a detox with a small group of patients right now. And do you have a plan for exceptional circumstances? What's your fallback? What's your acceptable, range in this situation with, whatever you're faced with? Maybe you're going to a barbecue and you don't do well with barbecue sauce. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And having a voice. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Speaking up for yourself, knowing
Yes.
what you need and speaking up for yourself.
So if we take a few minutes now just to talk a little bit about our Leap into the Deep program that we'll be bringing around, I think people are listening to what we're talking about. I think they'll be able to really get a feel for how our perspectives and our levels of expertise come together to create a package that is very unique for people to experience. Allison, do you want to talk a little bit about, from your experiences and things, what you're bringing in to Leap into the Deep?
I would love to be able to leave people with a few practices and a little bit of wisdom and knowledge of things that they can do every single day to bring them into a state of harmony, balance, joy, happiness, and a deeper remembrance of who they are. And I think that the ultimate goal of wellness is to stay in that state. And so I would love to be able to bring some tools and some wisdom around that.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Margaret, how about for you?
Well, my goal is for people to have a better understanding of how they actually physically operate, because it's so interesting to me that what our schooling process is. It seems to be more important that you know the capital of Montana than you know how your own body works. And so it's not really the body is endlessly fascinating to me anyway. It's a place I can geek out. But the principles are very straightforward. And the process of moving from wherever you are to a way of taking care of yourself and that's more aligned with how you actually operate. So understanding how you operate gives you the power of knowledge and then some pretty simple tools that you can start to change whatever your current practice is of how you're living your life and how you're feeding yourself and so on. So it's partly how is this all connected and what do I need to do now? Idea.
And I like to bring to the table awareness. So where are you noticing the stress in the body? And then as we move through things, but experiencing what both of you are bringing to the table, then that understanding of how much better your movement patterns are. And that opportunity provides for stepping forward into the future, not being stuck where you are, but also multidimensionally moving in that maybe you've always been moving straight forward and you don't know how to move to the side or even to look to the side. And then what happens if you move to the side and what does that open up for you? And I know people don't think of movement in that capacity, but I like to think about when people are in the kitchen and they're making something at the stove and they go to do something on the counter, they turn their whole body so they still face forward instead of turning to the side, grabbing what they need and come back because they're so used to just being forward. And this gives a more encompassing view of what is really possible. And I do that through movement. So yeah, I can hardly wait because it's just going to be such an embodying experience. Anything else you want to add, Allison, before we come to a movement option for today?
I just encourage people to give themselves the grace of making themselves first.
Mm-hmm. Margaret, anything?
I would build on that idea with a concept that we're all pretty familiar with, which is anybody who's been on a plane knows when they go through the safety check, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first. And that's because if you're not okay, if you're not functional, you have limited and decreasing ability to live your life purpose, to be of service to other people, to love yourself and to love others. And that's really, love and service is what life comes down to in my worldview. So having the tools to take care of yourself is an immensely powerful orientation for your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would add that when you have the awareness of how the stress is starting to feel within the body, instead of going to the pain point, but actually being aware of it ahead of that, then you have that opportunity to make change, but not because of the pain, but because you start to recognize the signals and you start to realize where flow is and where it's not. And then being able to bring in the tools that we're going to be discussing and bringing forward. Yeah. Okay, so Margaret, have you got some kind of a movement pattern you'd like to share that's your go-to every day or your favorite?
There are a couple that I'm working with right now that I really love. One is a breath practice, which is hands on heart. And it's a slow inhale with the ribs moving outward, not upward. Upward is a stress pattern. That drives that fight or flight. Slow filling of the rib cage at the base is very calming to the vagus nerve. So that slow inhale, hands on heart, slight pause, and then through parted lips, a slow exhale. As long and sustained as you can. That's very calming. So that's what I'm working with for myself and with the people I work with on calming stress in the moment. And in terms of just shaking it out, because we can't always take that visible moment, but doing a light standing twist can really release a lot of anxiety, stress, bodily tension. Just standing and allowing ourselves to move and just, it's sort of like you're a maypole and you're swinging around.
I like the idea of the maple. As the leaves are just coming out on our trees. Oh, thank you. I love both of those. You could feel everything just drop while you were doing the breath, and it's like, should I participate or should I not participate? So I'm hoping podcast people were listening and they started to breathe, or they noticed how quickly it was for them to change their breath pattern because of what you suggested. So, yeah. Allison, how about for you?
The one thing that I do every single day, and I do not leave the house without doing it, is anoint myself with oils. So all the different energy centers in my body, I anoint with a variety of different oils, depending on the day and feeling, etc. But I don't leave the house without doing that. And I've been doing that for years and years and years with good reason. So come join us and I can share all the reasons.
Awesome. And I'm going to suggest, goes a little bit with what you said, Margaret, with the breath, in that expanding the rib cage. And when you take the hands up in front of the body with, you could do it with palms down or palms up, but most often I'll do it with palms up. And then just turning the hands over and letting them settle. And then if there is any frozen ribs that aren't making any expansion, that's one way to actually let that go and create an opening for there to be more. So that's what
Nice.
I would share. Beautiful. Okay. Any last, well, I should ask, first of all, Allison, do you want to share how people can find you?
Yes, it's just my name, Allison, Allison, Stillman, Stillman, AllisonStillman.com.
Perfect. Great. And how about you, Margaret?
My practice is called Create Whole Body Health because that reflects how I think everything is connected. So the website is Create Whole Body Health, all one word, .com.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay. Any last pieces before we finish up today?
the idea of leap into the deep can be a little daunting because our brains are working against us. The brain wants us to be safe, and that generally means stuck. So I love this idea of the left foot. So just take one step forward. That might be your leap today. It's just one little step forward.
Awesome. And the foot chakras and the hand chakras are related to the heart chakra. So when you take that one step with the left foot, it's opening the heart. So you've got the gentleness to yourself and your gentleness to other people, but you also have the gentleness to opportunity. I think sometimes we think it's hard to move to the next place, but actually sometimes it's just to make the action and then you're there. Yeah. Anything else for you, Allison?
I'm just really excited to go deeper, because the deeper I go into the truth of who I am, the more joy, the more happiness, the more peace, the more love. And what else is there?
Those are great words to finish with. Thank you both
Absolutely.
so much. And I know this is, the podcast will be for a long time. Our program will be starting in a few weeks. So there'll be more information shared that way. But if you're listening to the podcast a little bit further down the road and you're wondering about what we've done, be sure to check out all of our resources, because we will have added whatever we've taken ourselves into that might be a deeper dive for us than what we've been sharing too. And we'll be happy to take you along on that journey as well. So please look us up. Thank you, everyone.
Such a joy to be with you both.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Season 3, we're devoting to the transformational process that happens when people reach into their authentic selves and create magic. Our season has several different focuses within the month, and we hope they inspire and empower you to consider living your true heart's desire with the love and compassion for others at the forefront. Thank you for joining us. This is Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, and I'm wishing you well-being.